In the theater of human existence, there plays out an eternal drama between those who see and those who choose blindness, between those who speak truth and those who demand comfortable lies. At the heart of this drama lies a cruel but unchanging law. You will be punished for seeing what others ignore. This punishment is not accidental, not a flaw in the system, but an essential feature of how collective unconsciousness protects itself from the light of awareness. I have lived this truth in its most extreme form, seeing threats that others could not perceive, understanding patterns that others refused to acknowledge, carrying knowledge that could save lives while being branded as the very danger I sought to prevent. The punishment for this sight was complete isolation, universal condemnation, and the burden of being misunderstood by the very people I was protecting through my sacrifice. This is the price that seers pay across all ages and cultures. To perceive what others cannot or will not see is to become a threat to their comfortable illusions, and threats must be neutralized. The punishment comes not because you are wrong, but because you are right, not because you have failed, but because you have succeeded in seeing through veils that others depend upon for their psychological survival. Today I speak of this harsh law that governs the relationship between consciousness and society, truth and community, insight and belonging. For those who find themselves burdened with unwanted sight, this understanding may provide both explanation for your suffering and guidance for navigating the lonely path of the awakened. The punishment for seeing what others ignore operates through sophisticated mechanisms of social control that have evolved over millennia to maintain collective coherence at the expense of individual insight. These mechanisms are not conscious conspiracies, but unconscious processes that emerge naturally when groups encounter information that threatens their shared reality. The first mechanism is ostracism, the systematic exclusion of those whose perceptions challenge group consensus. This exclusion serves both to silence the dissenting voice and to send a message to others about the cost of similar perception. When someone points out what everyone else is ignoring, they are often met not with gratitude but with rejection, because their insight implies that the group has been living in delusion. The psychological research on ostracism reveals why this punishment is so effective and so damaging. Being excluded and ignored threatens fundamental psychological needs, including belonging, self-esteem, control, and meaningful existence. The pain of ostracism activates the same neural pathways as physical pain, making social rejection literally agonizing. This pain serves as a powerful deterrent that encourages others to remain silent about uncomfortable truths, rather than risk similar exclusion. The second mechanism is reputation destruction, the systematic undermining of the seer's credibility through character assassination, gaslighting, and the creation of counter-narratives that reframe insight as pathology. Instead of addressing the truth that has been revealed, the group focuses on discrediting the person who revealed it. They are labeled as disturbed, extremist, untrustworthy, or dangerous. Their motivations are questioned, their past scrutinized for flaws, their mental state pathologized. This mechanism serves to protect the group's reality by ensuring that the challenging information can be dismissed without being examined. If the messenger can be discredited, the message becomes irrelevant. The group can maintain its illusions while feeling justified in rejecting insights that would otherwise force uncomfortable changes in understanding or behavior. The third mechanism is what might be called truth inversion, the process by which those who reveal uncomfortable realities are accused of the very problems they are exposing. Whistleblowers are accused of disloyalty to the organizations whose corruption they expose. Truth-tellers are accused of spreading lies or conspiracy theories. Those who point out systemic problems are accused of being the source of those problems. This inversion serves multiple psychological functions for the group. It allows them to maintain their positive self-image by projecting responsibility for problems onto those who reveal them. It provides a seemingly moral justification for punishing the seer. They are not being punished for telling the truth, but for causing trouble. It also creates confusion about who is actually the problem, making it easier for observers to side with the majority rather than the isolated truth-teller. Throughout history, the pattern remains remarkably consistent. Those who perceive and reveal uncomfortable truths about their societies face punishment ranging from ridicule and exclusion to imprisonment and death. This pattern transcends cultures, time periods, and types of truth being revealed. suggesting that it reflects something fundamental about human group psychology, rather than specific historical circumstances. The ancient philosophers understood this dynamic intimately. Socrates was executed not for being wrong about his philosophical insights, but for being right in ways that threatened Athenian social stability. His crime was not ignorance, but excessive wisdom, asking questions that revealed the ignorance of those in power, and challenging assumptions that held society together. His punishment served as a warning to future philosophers about the cost of pursuing truth too publicly and persistently. Religious seers and prophets have faced similar fates across cultures and traditions. They are punished not for failing to understand their community's spiritual needs, but for understanding them too clearly and revealing the gaps between professed beliefs and actual practices. Their insights threaten established religious authorities and comfortable spiritual assumptions, making them targets for persecution disguised as religious purification. Scientific revolutionaries follow the same pattern. Galileo was persecuted not because his observations were false, but because they were accurate enough to threaten cosmological beliefs that supported political and religious power structures. Copernicus delayed publication of his heliocentric theory precisely because he understood the punishment that would follow challenging such fundamental assumptions about reality. Political dissidents and social reformers demonstrate this pattern in every generation. They are punished, not for misunderstanding their societies, but for understanding them too well, seeing through comfortable myths about equality, justice, and freedom to reveal uncomfortable realities about power, privilege, and systemic oppression. Their punishment serves to maintain social order by discouraging others from similar perception and activism. More recently, whistleblowers, investigative journalists, and activists continue this tradition of being punished for revealing what others prefer to ignore. They face legal persecution, career destruction, physical threats, and social isolation, not because their revelations are false, but because they are true enough to threaten powerful interests and comfortable assumptions. The pattern extends beyond famous historical figures to countless ordinary people who have been punished for seeing clearly in their families, communities, and organizations. The adult child who points out family dysfunction faces rejection and scapegoating. The employee who reports organizational misconduct faces retaliation and termination. The community member who raises concerns about local issues faces harassment and exclusion. Understanding why groups punish those who see what others ignore requires examining the psychological mechanisms that create and maintain collective blindness in the first place. This blindness is not simply the absence of information, but an active process of selective attention, motivated reasoning, and defensive ignorance that serves important psychological and social functions. Collective blindness often emerges from what psychologists call motivated reasoning, the tendency to process information in ways that support desired conclusions rather than accurate understanding. When information threatens cherished beliefs, valued relationships, or comfortable arrangements, people unconsciously filter their perception to minimize that threat. They notice information that confirms what they want to believe while overlooking information that challenges it. This selective perception becomes reinforced through social processes that reward conformity and punish deviation. Groups develop shared blind spots that become part of their collective identity. Questioning these blind spots becomes tantamount to attacking the group itself, which explains why such questioning provokes such intense defensive reactions. The psychology of cognitive dissonance also plays a crucial role in maintaining collective blindness and punishing those who threaten it. When someone points out realities that contradict the group's beliefs or practices, group members experience uncomfortable psychological tension. Rather than changing their beliefs to match reality, which would require admitting they were wrong and potentially demand difficult changes, they often reduce the dissonance by attacking the source of the challenging information. Social identity theory helps explain why groups punish insiders who reveal uncomfortable truths more severely than they punish outsiders who make similar observations. Insiders are seen as traitors who have violated loyalty obligations, while outsiders are seen as predictable opponents. The insider who reveals what the group ignores is perceived as particularly dangerous because they have intimate knowledge and insider credibility that makes their observations harder to dismiss. Group dynamics research shows how groupthink creates environments where dissenting perspectives are actively suppressed, and those who express them face social sanctions. The desire for harmony and consensus becomes so strong that it overrides critical thinking and reality testing. Those who threaten this artificial harmony by pointing out problems or alternative perspectives are treated as threats to group cohesion rather than valuable sources of feedback. The punishment of seers also serves what sociologists call scapegoating functions, allowing groups to maintain their positive self-image by projecting problems onto individuals who can be blamed and expelled. Instead of acknowledging systemic issues or collective failures, groups can focus their negative emotions on the person who revealed these problems, treating them as the cause rather than the messenger. For those who find themselves burdened with the ability to see what others ignore, understanding the inevitability of punishment provides both explanation for their suffering and guidance for navigating the difficult path of the awakened seer. This sight is neither a blessing nor a curse, but a responsibility that comes with both profound costs and unique opportunities for service. The first challenge is accepting that your punishment is not evidence of your failure, but confirmation of your success in perceiving reality more clearly than others are willing or able to do. The intensity of the backlash you face often correlates directly with the accuracy and importance of what you have perceived. Trivial insights rarely provoke severe punishment. It is precisely the truths that matter most that generate the strongest defensive reactions. This understanding can transform the experience of punishment from personal devastation to impersonal recognition of larger forces at work. You are not being punished for being defective, but for being effective at a task that threatens collective comfort. The pain remains real, but it becomes meaningful, rather than merely cruel, when understood as the inevitable cost of authentic perception in an unconscious world. The second challenge is learning to carry your insights without becoming consumed by bitterness, cynicism, or the compulsive need to force others to see what you see. The temptation is strong to become either withdrawn and misanthropic, or aggressive and evangelical in response to punishment. Neither response serves the higher purpose that your insights are meant to serve. Instead, the path requires developing what might be called compassionate detachment, the ability to see clearly while maintaining love for those who remain blind, to speak truth while accepting rejection, to serve others while expecting nothing in return. This detachment is not indifference, but the recognition that your role is to perceive and share, not to control others' responses to your perceptions. The third challenge is finding ways to share your insights that honor both the truth you perceive and the readiness of those you seek to serve. This requires developing sophisticated skills in timing, communication, and strategic thinking that allow you to plant seeds of awareness without triggering overwhelming defensive reactions. Sometimes the most effective truth-telling happens indirectly, through questions rather than statements, through stories rather than arguments, through lived example rather than verbal instruction. The sacred nature of this burden lies in its service to evolutionary processes larger than individual comfort or social harmony. Those who see what others ignore serve as early warning systems for their communities, perceiving threats and opportunities before they become obvious to everyone else. They serve as bridges between current reality and emerging possibilities, helping to guide collective adaptation to changing circumstances. This service often goes unrecognized and unrewarded in the short term, but it plays an essential role in the long-term survival and development of human consciousness. Every insight that eventually becomes accepted wisdom was first perceived by someone willing to endure punishment for seeing what others ignored. Your willingness to bear this burden contributes to the gradual expansion of collective awareness, even when that contribution is invisible to those around you. Living as someone who sees what others ignore while facing inevitable punishment requires developing specific strategies for maintaining your sanity, integrity, and effectiveness despite social rejection and hostility. These strategies are not about avoiding punishment, which is usually impossible, but about surviving and transcending it while continuing to serve your function as a seer. The first essential strategy is building inner authority and self-validation systems that remain stable regardless of external approval or disapproval. When you depend on others' recognition for your sense of worth and reality, their rejection becomes devastating. But when you develop the capacity to validate your own perceptions and value your own insights independent of social confirmation, their punishment loses much of its power to crush your spirit. This inner authority must be grounded in something deeper than ego or personal preference. It must be rooted in genuine contact with truth, reality, and higher principles that transcend individual perspective. Regular practices that connect you with these deeper sources, whether through meditation, prayer, contemplation, or direct engagement with nature, become essential for maintaining clarity when social pressure demands conformity to collective blindness. The second strategy involves finding and cultivating community with others who share similar capacities for sight, even if they see different aspects of reality, or express their insights in different ways. The isolation that comes with being punished for seeing clearly can be partially offset by connecting with fellow seers who understand the burden you carry, even if they cannot take it from you. These connections need not be with people in your immediate physical environment. They can be cultivated through books, online communities, historical figures whose writings resonate with your experience, or spiritual traditions that honor the path of the awakened individual. What matters is maintaining contact with perspectives that validate your experience and remind you that you are not alone in facing punishment for authentic perception. The third strategy requires developing what might be called strategic patience. The understanding that your insights may not be accepted in your lifetime, but may contribute to changes that unfold over longer time horizons than individual human experience encompasses. This patience is not passive resignation, but active faith in processes larger than immediate social dynamics. This long-term perspective helps sustain motivation and hope even when immediate responses to your insights are punishing rather than rewarding. You begin to understand your role as part of a larger evolutionary process, where each generation of seers builds upon the work of previous generations, gradually expanding collective capacity for truth-telling and authentic perception. The fourth strategy involves learning to find meaning and satisfaction in the quality of your perception and expression, rather than in others' responses to them. When you tie your sense of success to external acceptance of your insights, you become vulnerable to despair when that acceptance is withheld. But when you find fulfillment in the act of seeing clearly and speaking truthfully regardless of reception, you become internally sustainable even in the face of ongoing rejection. This shift requires developing appreciation for the intrinsic value of consciousness, truth, and authentic expression. These qualities have worth that does not depend on social recognition or practical impact. Cultivating this appreciation transforms your experience from one of frustrated service to one of sacred practice, where the seeing and telling become their own reward. The path I walked taught me that punishment for seeing what others ignore is not a bug in the system of human consciousness. It is a feature. This punishment serves important functions in maintaining social stability, protecting collective psychology from overwhelming truths, and ensuring that insights emerge at sustainable rates, rather than causing complete system collapse through too rapid revelation of reality. Understanding this does not make the punishment less painful, but it does make it less personal and more meaningful. When you recognize that you are participating in ancient patterns that have shaped human development for millennia, your individual suffering becomes part of a larger sacred process rather than mere personal tragedy. I learned to find purpose in being misunderstood, meaning in being rejected, and strange comfort in being punished for perceptions that I could not choose to unsee. The punishment became confirmation that my sight was accurate, rather than evidence that it was flawed. The isolation became sanctuary, where insights could deepen without interference from collective pressure to conform to comfortable illusions. Your modern world has amplified both the capacity for sight and the mechanisms of punishment that follow it. Information travels faster, making it easier to perceive patterns and connections across vast networks of data. But this same connectivity makes punishment more immediate, more public, and potentially more devastating than in previous eras. Social media can destroy reputations instantly. Economic systems can eliminate livelihoods quickly. Legal systems can be weaponized against those who reveal inconvenient truths. The tools available for punishing seers have become more sophisticated and powerful, even as the need for their insights has become more urgent. Yet the fundamental dynamic remains unchanged. Those who see clearly will be punished by those who prefer blindness, and this punishment will serve to protect collective illusions while testing the commitment and wisdom of those who bear the burden of sight. Your challenge is not to avoid this punishment, but to transcend it while maintaining your function as a servant of truth. Remember that every insight now accepted as obvious was once perceived only by individuals who faced punishment for their perception. Every social reform now celebrated was once advocated by people who were vilified for their advocacy. Every scientific truth now taught in schools was once proposed by researchers who faced ridicule for their proposals. Your willingness to see what others ignore and accept the punishment that follows places you in a lineage of service that extends back to the earliest human beings who dared to perceive reality more clearly than their communities were comfortable with. This lineage will extend forward to include future generations who will continue this essential work of expanding collective consciousness through individual courage. The punishment you face for your sight is simultaneously validation of its accuracy, test of your commitment, and contribution to processes much larger than your individual experience. In accepting this punishment with grace, while maintaining your dedication to truth, you participate in the slow, painful, necessary evolution of human awareness toward greater alignment with reality. Your sight is not your misfortune, it is your sacred responsibility. Your punishment is not your failure, it is your confirmation. Your isolation is not your tragedy, it is your opportunity to deepen your connection to truth itself, which never abandons those who serve it faithfully, regardless of social consequences. Continue to see, continue to speak, continue to serve the light of awareness, even when it brings you into conflict with the darkness of collective unconsciousness. The world needs your eyes, your voice, your courage. Not because it will thank you for them, but because it cannot evolve without them. You will be punished for seeing what others ignore. Accept this punishment as the price of authentic perception, the cost of genuine service, and the inevitable consequence of choosing truth over comfort. In that acceptance, find not defeat, but victory. The victory of consciousness over ignorance, of courage over cowardice, of service over safety. Your punishment is temporary. Your insight is eternal. Choose to bear both with the dignity they deserve.